All right, well, let's get to it. I think we'll kind of set the scene in a minute, but usually whenever we speak, we kind of do a quick intro. So if you've ever seen us before, apologies, but we typically beam up our intros. My name's Luke Evans. I'm a solutions architect. A very brief overview of myself. I've worked in collaborative technologies. That's where I came from. I did about 6 years at Microsoft. Since then, consultant/architect, and I'm very pleased to say at the moment I'm a Microsoft MVP for M365 apps and services.
Brilliant, thanks, Luke. So before I do my intro, I just want to say a huge congrats to Luke, who finally got his MVP last month. So well done, Luke. I know you were waiting a while for that one.
Thanks, Zoe.
So I'm Zoe Wilson. I've had the pleasure of working with Luke for the last 5 years, although I've recently changed organisations. I'm currently in my 3rd month at Avanade, where I'm the Europe Workplace Value Realisation Offering Lead. And what that means is that I work across our European business, helping people get the value out of their modern workplace platforms. So once you've got M365, what do you do next? And for me, it's great that Metaverse and Mesh for Teams actually falls into that category. I've worked with collaborative technologies for many years as well. So I think I first started working with SharePoint like 18 years ago. For the last few years, I've been growing and building high-performing teams who actually go and implement all of this stuff. I'm also an MVP for Office Apps and Services. I'm one of the Viva Explorers, so that's something that you can frequently find me talking about as well. And I'm a huge advocate for women in technology, which is one of the reasons that it's one of the reasons that I get out there and speak so much, because I think we need more visible women to get more women into tech.
Cool. And I just got to ask, sorry, the Viva Explorers logo, there was no expense for creating that one, was there?
Hey, that was someone who did that in their own time, so credit due.
All right, what do we plan to cover today? So, I mean, let's just break it down very briefly. Metaverse, what is it? What does it mean? Then we want to have a quick look at Mesh and what is Microsoft Mesh versus Mesh for Teams. We want to look at some use cases of kind of some real world examples of how we think this technology can help people and what it might be used for. We then, and you know, we're praying to the demo gods. We want to kind of run through kind of what does the tech actually look like? What is Mesh for Teams going to look like with a live demo? And then, you know, what can I do to better prepare myself? This is the first time we're running through this deck, so we're still working it out. So please bear with us. Can questions please be saved until the end? And I think there's a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So we'll probably tackle it then and there as the plan.
What I would say though is please feel free to pop them in the chat so that you don't forget what you want to ask, and we will come back to everything when we get to the Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, great try, Zoe. So first off, what is the metaverse? And I've kind of just put meta what? And Zoe, I don't know if you wanted to tackle this one or shall I?
So I'll take it. You can add on if you like.
All right, wonderful.
I mean, when you look for definitions online, there are tons and tons of different definitions of the metaverse. A really simple way to think about it is the metaverse is the internet, but in 3D. So it gives you that kind of that spatial awareness and a different way of interacting from a digital perspective. And actually, the Wikipedia definition defines it as that collective virtual shared space, bringing together virtual worlds, augmented reality, and the internet into a shared virtual environment that people access via the internet.
And Zoe, I like putting you on the spot. You do it to me all the time. So are there examples of like the metaverse already out there in this day and age? Or
yeah, I mean, there absolutely are. You know, AltSpace VR is a great example of something that's been up and running. There are other virtual world platforms as well. And when we get to the use cases, we'll see some examples of how people are using it today.
And then I got one final question, sorry. What about something like World of Warcraft, like an online game? Is that considered the metaverse?
I don't know. What do you think?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I think it could be. I think it's at least the makings of one. It might, I think, be considered something on the next slide, which we have, and that's probably an M world, which is like it's probably a making one of them. I have a feeling it's probably what it's going to be. So I think, and this is an interesting one. I think the metaverse lies at the intersection of 3 emerging technologies and user bases. Yeah, and I love this triangle. It's the visual one. So what we've got are three distinct technologies, and they're kind of merging together, and that kind of forms the metaverse is what we've got. And on the left, we have probably where I like to hang is kind of all the different technologies, all the different devices that we can use. So augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality, and all the different kind of devices and headsets we have. So there's roughly 30 million installed headsets, 800 million mobile AR users, so augmented reality. And I should say there is a difference between all these, so it's no good just me saying them. But augmented reality is, say, taking your phone and extending it into real life, so you can beam up a phone and have a look at augmented reality. Virtual reality is kind of what you're used to with the headset and goggles, and mixed reality, I think, is more kind of mesh, which is a combination of the two. So it's taking mixed reality and augmented reality and combining the two together. And I think that's kind of what mesh is looking like. And it's a $16 billion market, hardware, software, and advertising. The next one is M Worlds, and I think that's kind of what we're alluding to. And correct me if I've got it wrong, but I think this is Metaverse Worlds, and this is going to be, you know, online virtual environments where you can actually interact with the metaverse as it stands at the moment. 300 million to 500 million active users, so a strong number of users out there. And probably my least favorite, but you know, it's another emerging technology. It's the whole decentralized blockchain, Web3, virtual assets kind of category, and the combination of these three coming together is what we think is what the metaverse is all about. Now, Web3 is the next kind of iteration. I think it actually came from the co-founder of Ethereum is the one. It's more a concept of a decentralized internet for anyone that doesn't understand. With, I think, you know, less power going to big tech organizations and more decentralized internet. Off the back of that, you've obviously got the whole NFT and blockchain around that. So
I agree with you. I'm not too sure about some of the hype around this, but it's been really interesting actually to watch big vendors already starting to move into NFTs. So Nike, I think, was a good example of one that was starting to create digital assets. And I think if you look into the future, you can imagine that you'll have people in these virtual worlds who have got I don't know, sneakers that they're wearing that you know, that they've paid a premium for example. So I think that kind of branding aspect is quite an interesting one.
I think it's spot on there, Zoe. I know certainly at Reddit they have those avatars that can go for like a grand. If you want a little custom avatar, it sounds crazy to me. I'm not really down with the NFT scene, but this is kind of what it's all shaping up to be, is the interesting one. Now, I'll feel this next one, or we can take it together, Zoe. But this is a really interesting one for me. So this is really about a study that was conducted, a work trend index report from Microsoft, and I think what we're trying to say is the metaverse is coming to work. They ran a survey on employees, and kind of these are just the high level stats that we wanted to run you through. So for me, there's some good ones here. So 52% of employees are open to using digital immersive spaces in the metaverse for meetings or team activities next year. 47% of employees are comfortable with having a digital avatar representing themselves in meetings. I quite like this next one because we want to kind of show both sides of the story. Is 16% of employees don't want anything to do with the metaverse. And I had one more that I didn't put on from the digital work, or the work trend index report, and that was 13% of people don't even know what the metaverse is. So that kind of gives those one. But the other one that I really liked was this stat from Gartner, which is by 2026 they're predicting 25% of people will spend at least 1 hour a day in the metaverse for work, shopping, education, social, or entertainment. So I think the message that we're trying to get across here is that the metaverse is likely to be heading to a workplace to you soon. And
I think there was another really interesting set of stats that came out of this data as well, which was around the generations.
Oh, yeah.
So about 51% of Gen Z and 48% of millennial workers are the most interested in using the metaverse for work. But only about a quarter of, so 27% of baby boomers are actually interested in using it. And I know some people think this is unsurprising, but when you think that those people are actually 60 and upwards, you know, around 59, 60 and upwards, I actually think that a quarter of them being willing to embrace it is quite a positive thing.
When you put it that way, I would tend to agree with you. Now, I'll be honest, I don't ever know where I lie. I think I'm either a millennial or a Gen Z. I'm not even sure where I lie, but I for one am excited to give this a go and see how we get on is the thing. And that's a very quick overview of Metaverse at a high level. I think what we want to look at next is kind of what is mesh and what is the difference between mesh for Microsoft Mesh versus Mesh for Teams is really what we're trying to get at. So what is Microsoft Mesh? So what we've got on the screen here is an example of Microsoft Mesh is the one. So it's virtual reality and augmented reality combined together. And basically you can see on the right here, we have, I'm the man, Alex Kipman. I don't know if anyone saw this one. Was it Inspire or was it Ignite? I can't quite remember. But when they demoed this guy, I felt like was on a different planet to the rest of us. He was absolutely out there. I absolutely loved it. The idea here is that we can use kind of the technology. It's a collaborative platform that allows anyone to have a shared virtual experience on a variety of devices. So the idea is that we could pick up anything that I think it's any mobile device, your HoloLens, your virtual reality headsets, and join the mesh is the idea. And it's built on Azure. It's basically come about through a number of years of research and development and areas ranging such as hand and eye tracking and the HoloLens development, creating persistent holograms and artificial intelligence models that can create expressive avatars. And I think what we've seen, and me and Zoe both had to play with this, I think roughly maybe a year ago, we got to actually play with the Mesh platform. So we got to strap on 2 HoloLenses and actually step into Microsoft Mesh, as it were. And as you can see here, we were represented as 2 digital avatars, and we were playing with the items as shown on the table. And it was a lot of fun, actually, to be honest. One thing we were cracking up half the time. I think the power of Mesh really is we were in the same geographical space. Imagine we can do that and take it from maybe a very simple example is me and Zoe. I'm based in Reading, Zoe based in Nottingham. You know, we're a good 2-3 hours away from each other. But the idea is we could step into a virtual space and kind of interact with each other and objects, as kind of shown on the screen. That one there is kind of Microsoft Mesh. What is the difference? Mesh for Teams, yeah. I think Mesh for Teams really is, in the most simple way, is kind of taking Microsoft Mesh as we've seen and extending that further into Teams. And the idea is that, well, I'll cheat here, but it's the idea that we can take that mixed reality overlay and allow Teams users to kind of collaborate in virtual spaces, work with persistent 3D content, and access Teams from their mixed reality glasses and VR headsets. So it's kind of similar to what we've seen. It's taking that existing Microsoft Mesh platform and extending it into Teams. Now, it looks to offer an immersive collaborative experience. So you can see on the right, and this is hopefully what we're going to demo in a bit, is that you can see we could take a virtual meeting room, a virtual space, and we'll run through some of the use cases in a bit. One of the things that did make me laugh, and I was looking through kind of when we expect to actually play with this. And to be honest, originally I think it was promised in the first half of 2022. Now, obviously, we've come and gone past that, and I haven't actually got an updated timeline as to when we might see that. So at the moment, we're kind of just treading water in all reality, trying to figure out when we'd see that. But that doesn't mean we can't prepare for it and get ready for it is the important thing. Now, for me, it's built on 3 things. AltSpace VR is the key one, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today in the demo. Immersive Teams features like Together Mode, so it's taking that existing functionality that we've got and extending it, and Microsoft's vision for the Metaverse. I think the cool thing we can see here as well is we've got kind of virtual avatars sitting around a table, working in a virtual meeting room, as it were. Now, 5 key features of Mesh for Teams, and this is what we found out was available or publicly available to kind of talk through. 3D avatars, I think, is a really cool one in the bottom left. You can create a 3D image of yourself. So the really nice thing is, what I've certainly found is you can get fatigue from having your video camera on all the time. And a lot of people might not just want to sit there in meetings for hours upon hours with their camera switched on. I think a lot of people would feel relatively more comfortable with an avatar that represents and projects what they look like, but not necessarily broadcasting them up. So I think 3D avatars is an awesome one. Holoportation, recreates a hologram. Oh yeah, go for it, Zoe.
Yeah, just on that 3D avatars one as well. I think it's really important from an inclusion perspective. I was talking to someone last week who shared that it's really important for people in the trans community, because they might, you know, if they're going through transition, they might not feel like they're accepted and able to, you know, be physically on screen in a professional sense. So for them, that the ability, you know, for groups like that, who are marginalised, that the ability to have that 3D avatar will actually allow them to interact in a more physical sense. So I think that inclusion element is really important as well.
And yeah, the one that I like, my favorite feature of probably the 3D avatars is say you've switched on 3D avatar, it will actually track your facial expression, and you can actually, you know, if you're smiling, laughing, it can be represented on the screen, and you don't necessarily have to have your camera on. Like I know me and Zoe live with our cameras on, but it's not for everyone, in all honesty. So I think it offers a nice kind of ground between that. Holo quotation, this is awesome. Like we said a minute ago, the ability to whack on the headset and be holoported, as we saw in the previous slide, an avatar, and work with things in kind of the interact with the surroundings in your location. Again, this is, I'll be honest, this is kind of the same one that I just touched upon in terms of the 3D avatar, but audio cues. So audio will inform your facial animation using audio cues. So very much like I said a minute ago, if you're laughing, you're smiling, it can also be represented on the avatar. The next one is kind of workspaces, and we're going to come to that in a bit, but the actual idea of creating a virtual workspace for you to interact with. And I think it's one of the key ones kind of in terms of preparation. What does a virtual workspace look like in Mesh for Teams? We're not really sure of how we're going to be able to customize them or make them, but obviously we might want to brand them up and make them kind of country or device or organization specific, is what I would say. And yeah, the other one that they've told us is Mesh for Teams will be available on any major immersive reality gear, including VR headsets, HoloLens 2, all mesh-enabled apps will be accessible via iOS, Android tablets, and PCs. That's pretty awesome. HoloLens 2, I mean, I really wanted to play with one, but it's, I think, like a $3,000 buy-in, so I don't have that kind of cash kicking around, unfortunately. So I've got a like Quest Oculus 2 at the moment, just to mess around with this sort of stuff.
Brilliant. All right, so let's move on to some use cases. So obviously, as Luke said, Mesh for Teams isn't available yet. So the use cases that we're looking at are more from a virtual world perspective. And like I mentioned in my intro, it's been really nice for me actually to come to Avanade and to see that we're actively talking to customers who are quite forward thinking about where Metaverse could fit into their enterprise solutions. But actually, I've discovered that they've had some really good examples that they've used themselves as well. So if you just move forward one, Luke. So one of the things that they do internally, or we do internally, is have regular sessions across the M365 community to share learnings, what people are working on, and that kind of thing. And they actually ran one of their sessions in the Metaverse. So this, instead of it being another Teams meeting on a Friday afternoon when people had spent the entire week in Teams, it was a much more interactive session where people could network and actually physically approach colleagues who may be working in a different part of the world. And you can see there the content beamed up that they were running through in the session as well. So I think that kind of learning and networking event is a really good use case. Mm-hmm. And then again, so all team meetings. So they for this one, they created a virtual rooftop, and they had a lineup of presentations on the stage with different speakers presenting as hosts. And then everybody who attended was able to circulate again around this virtual space and network and connect with colleagues from different parts of the business.
I mean, let's look. This one's an easy enough one, so I'll probably tackle that one if that's all right, Zoe. So again, you know, the idea is you could put on a festive event similar to that, but it's more kind of social in nature. You can see that they're handing out they had a virtual event with a lottery to include awesome prizes like VR headsets, PS5s, premium headsets. You can see in the top right of this, you can see that they've beamed this up, and you can see they've actually got the raffle going on there, and it's a nice way, certainly when everyone's remote, to kind of get together and have a little festive party, as it were.
And then similar to that, there was a Pride event as well. So, you know, it doesn't need to just be about bringing people together in a work context, but this is more around the employee networks and communities and giving them a space to actually come and share as well. With this one, it was slightly different because they actually had performances in the Metaverse.
So yeah, we can see in the bottom left someone's singing away and jamming there. Awesome. And I have to say, one of my absolute favorites, they got Guta Mama here, who's the lazy egg. So I am absolutely in love with this one. I can't believe when I saw him chilling in the metaverse, I was over the moon.
And then another one which Avanade have used is from a recruiting perspective, and actually we do see a little bit of interest from clients around this as well. I think the reason that this was looked at over the last couple of years was because it was impossible to do things like graduate recruiting events. So creating a virtual space and allowing people the ability to come in and be physically present in that meant that from a graduate recruiter perspective, Avanade were able to differentiate themselves from other graduate recruiters out there, and it gave more of that feel of an actual recruitment event where you could just walk up to people from I don't know, different teams, different departments, and ask questions of different people with all of the kind of information around that as well. So I think that's another interesting one. Did you drop the mini golf one in, Luke? If not, I
didn't actually know, but you can.
So another one that that the Modern Work business unit has actually done. They've created a virtual mini golf, and they've actually had several social events in the metaverse as well, where people again from different parts of the world are all coming in and competing with the virtual mini golf. So I think there's some really fun options as well that you can look at.
And yeah, we kind of just highlighted a whole bunch of different potential use cases out there that you could do, and some of them are kind of covered as part of that, but I think some of the ones are trade shows, exhibitions sounds awesome, virtual spaces, worlds, trainings, product releases, launches, virtual events. Some of these I actually could see pretty useful. And then obviously we've got some that are already out kind of in the field as the thing. So the remote assist, remote expert support, those ones are just beyond cool, where you can have someone actually assisting you over a HoloLens so they can see what you see. And I think, what was the scenario that you said on that one, Zoe? I think it was somewhere like, imagine you working in a data center and you're stuck there, you don't really have much of a clue, but you could have someone else hop on a HoloLens and guide you through what you're doing in the middle of the data center, really.
Yeah, there was a really interesting health use case that I saw for the metaverse recently as well, where I can't remember which organisation it was, but there was a really complicated surgery that a team of experts were planning to undertake, which I think took many hours. And what they did, I mean, I think they almost created a digital twin, and they came into the metaverse and they practiced the surgery. I think they spent hundreds of hours in the metaverse practicing the surgery again and again and again, so that when it was time to actually perform the surgery, they all knew exactly what they needed to do. And I think that's a really, really interesting application of the technology.
Awesome.
Brilliant. All right. So again, just to say, we can't demo Mesh for Teams, it's not out yet, but we wanted to just make this a little bit more fun and interactive. So we're going to take you into our AltSpace VR world that we've created for demos. I will just add a caveat to say that until the last couple of days, we've not used this in a little while, so please do forgive us if we mess up.
And I think to add to that, there is some value in demoing this, simply because it really is kind of the underlying technology that Mesh for Teams is going to be built on. So this is kind of how it's going to look. We're not sure on exact specifics, but this is kind of the underlying technology that's going to be used to create it, really is the important thing.
Yeah, and as you can see, I mean, I obviously am not wearing a headset, so I've got the AltSpace VR app on my PC, and I'm just interacting with this through mouse and keyboard controls. But you can, if you've got a device and handsets and things, you can move around this in a much more seamless way. Now, I will apologise for the giant cat, and anybody on this call who knows me will know I have giant cats, and I think when we set this world up originally, we were messing around resizing things, and we've now created an object that's so big we can't seem to do anything with it.
It's all right, I've just grabbed the cat.
You've grabbed the cat. So the first thing you'll notice, I mean, this is a standard world that we set up as a template, but you can see we've customized this. We've added some objects that you can interact with. We've got our Twitter handles are in here. and all of these things, people who come into this room can, they can move around and interact with stuff. Now, Luke does think he's killed the giant cat, but unfortunately, that will reset momentarily. And you can put things like screens around as well, so you can kind of make this really branded. You can custom design objects as well that go into the world, so you can actually build something that is very specific to your use case or your organization. So that's kind of the lobby area. If I come down here, you'll see we've got we've essentially got like a meeting space. So again, if we think through a scenario where this could be useful, you could use this to run a virtual user group. So everybody can kind of come into the space and network and have a chat. And then when it's time for the actual session, there are host controls that mean that you can kind of force everyone to be quiet. And then everybody can come into this space and watch the content on the screen if Luke can get that beamed up there.
Right.
There we go. So you might recognise these slides from a few minutes ago. So again, you can kind of beam things into the room as well. And this is a slightly different way of running the session. So we could have actually invited all of you into this and run the entire session using this technology, which I think is just fantastic.
And I think one of my favorite features is they have the concept of we've got presenting roles and kind of just what's the one I'm looking for? Basically, just a visitor really is the thing. So we have the whole, or attendee is probably the word I'm looking for. So we can have presenters that are able to go up onto this stage area that me and Zoe are on at the moment, whereas other people are kind of, oh, you've got it, wonderful.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to grab all sorts of objects. So we can grab microphones and hand it to people, and it can basically broadcast their voice across the whole of the room, as it were. Zoe's very kindly picked up a laser pointer. I think she's discarded it. And I mean, we do have a lot of fun in here. Now, I don't know if that's just because we're just learning it all, or I think it's quite a bit of fun as well. So I would have whacked on a VR headset, but I don't really have a great deal of room in my office, the thing. So I've gone with the desktop version at the moment. But Zoe's just spawning a new laser pointer there. You can see that one just popped up there.
Yeah, I think my mouse is breaking. I was struggling to interact, but you can see Luke with the microphone. I don't know if you want to grab the laser pointer and.
I will, but I tell you what, I couldn't actually figure out how to blast the laser. Was the problem? Give me a second. Let me go find one.
There's one in front of me.
Oh, bingo! Wonderful. How did you switch it on?
Just grab it. It should just come on.
So apologies. Also, you could have the other one. You can. What other ones can you do? I think we had a lot of fun the first time we came in here. Is the one. So I don't know if you want to share the story, Zoe, but the first time you went, the raise hand option, spot on. If you want to conduct a Q&A, thank you very much. So you can conduct a Q&A. It's pretty darn cool in terms of what you can do. But the first time we actually ventured into this to kind of get ready for playing around with this, I remember distinctly you spawned into a default area, and Zoe hadn't changed her virtual avatar, as it were. And what that meant was there was about 4 different people looking exactly the same as Zoe, wandering around. So it's kind of hard for me to identify exactly who she was, is the thing. They all looked identical, was the one.
Yeah, I think that was in the campfire area, wasn't it? And I think we really struggled with the controls initially. So if you are in a situation where you're looking to get into what space we are from a work perspective, what I would advise is get in there early and practice for sure.
Well, let me beam up the slide there, Zoe, for that one, if that's all right. And we've got 1 or 2 slides left just on how to prepare for the kind of this whole experience, as it were. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share that, and let's just go here. So I think that was Zoe very neatly leading us onto this next one, and that's really.
You're beaming up the presenter.
I am, aren't I? What a wally. Apologies. Let's go with that. Sorry. Thanks, Zoe. So how to prepare is the important one, and we're looking at kind of what are some of the key aspects that we would looking at in terms of preparing. I think for me, it's considering if you wanted to use some virtual reality headsets, really. So the hardware. So if you wanted to get some, you could request that we want to start planning for this. can we get any hardware? But me and Zoe, just to test this out, originally just worked with our PCs just to get a feel for what AltSpace VR, the underlying platform Mesh for Teams, is like, and kind of work with that. I think use case is an important one. Zoe ran through a whole bunch of different great use cases that this could actually be used for. But I think for me, it's probably figuring out what your business can actually do with it. Where would it add value? This is basically the point that Zoe was alluding to a second ago. Virtual spaces. What we found, certainly in our experience, is quite difficult to customize these areas. Certainly, you can see we've got a giant cat still kicking around after a number of months. It's really, what do you want a virtual space for your organization to look like? So, like Zoe called out, corporate branding and the like. The approach, how do we want to basically approach the whole kind of Mesh for Teams, and what does that look like, and what are some of the key lessons we've learned along the way? So I think that one's more just about planning up front and trying to think through what is it that we've kind of, well, if you get ahead of the game early is what I'm trying to say, you probably have some learnings like we do of how this thing should work and what works well versus what doesn't. Whereas if you, oh, sorry, go Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably similar advice to when Teams Live events came out.
Yeah.
When I was working with colleagues and customers on use cases for Teams Live events, one of the biggest bits of advice that I gave them was to practice and to start with something small. So don't think, right, we're going to have an all hands meeting, we're going to get everybody in and kind of, just have a big bang. You want to make sure before you actually start to introduce the tech to people that that you've tested, that the relevant people are comfortable with it, and that you've kind of done it on a small scale first. So I think building that time in to familiarize yourself with the tech is absolutely key.
Awesome. And then I think we've got one slide left, sorry. And it's kind of trust and privacy in the metaverse. So things that we're thinking of considering is the one. So when you're going to kind of start planning this out, what are the things that probably kind of matter? I think some of these are kind of just built and covered by the platform. So resiliency, so it's hosted on Azure. Longer term Mesh for Microsoft Mesh will be hosted on Azure, so the resiliency side is there. I think security, again, there's going to be some controls around who can access these virtual spaces, how do they come in, the identity management piece. And you can tell I'm a fan of all the technical ones, so I'd probably defer to Zoe for the I guess the human side, really, because I like to live on the technical side. So I think, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, from a human perspective, I think as with a lot of modern technologies, I think focusing on that change and adoption is super important. And part of that is around behaviours. So I think before you start bringing in people, whether it's a community user group or an event, or whether it's something that's within an enterprise or an organisation, making sure that people understand what the right behaviours are. And again, when Luke and I were first exploring this a while back, one of the things that that we were reading about was in the Facebook Meta world, where they had people who were essentially acting as like a bit like moderators. They were there to kind of help people who were coming into the metaverse. And actually, I probably could have done this the first time I went into AltSpace VR. And what they found happened was they had people who were trolling them essentially, and they were just like walking right in front of people so they couldn't see the options menu that pops up in front of them.
I think there's the whole concept of the kind of safety bubble is as well. So that one is another good one. So the ability to, oh yeah, sorry.
Carry on.
The ability to activate kind of a barrier around your own personal space is another great one that they built in, because I think that has also come from the learnings of when they're kind of implementing this. They found that a number of people were harassing people online in the metaverse, and I think it was more just that you can activate a kind of a barrier so people can't get that close to you if you want and kind of harass you, as it were.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, that's that safety perspective. I read something else as well about a woman who'd been raped in a virtual world, which is, it's quite a kind of, I know it's quite a grim thing to talk about, but I think that behaviour and the standards that you expect for people is absolutely key, because we've already seen evidence that people will abuse it. So making sure that you've got those governance guidelines in place, that people understand, how they're meant to behave and what the right thing is to do. Helping people with the technical adoption as well. So making sure people understand, how to get into the world, how to move around, and some, you know, some of that kind of thing before you put them into the pressure where they're perhaps being a host or presenting or something like that. And I touched on the inclusion aspect earlier, but making sure that experiences are designed to be inclusive and accessible is absolutely key. And I think from an accessibility perspective, another really interesting thing that the metaverse does is make it easier for people who are physically disabled to actually get in and interact physically as well. You know, again, I was on a call last week and I used my granddad as an example of someone who, if he was still alive, would have probably loved this tech. And he had multiple sclerosis and he was diagnosed, I think, in his early 50s. And he lived until he was in his early 80s. So he lived with disability for quite a long time, and it was quite debilitating for him. And by the time, you know, within kind of the few years before he died, he was completely physically incapacitated. He had a little electric wheelchair that he used to move around. And he had a big, massive computer in the corner of the residential living that they lived in. He had a smart TV, he had a smartphone. He added all of his carers on Facebook, and he credits the internet in its early iterations as being the thing that kept him alive for so long when he was disabled, because it gave him a route out into the world. And one of the things that I've thought about quite a bit recently is how much more this could have given him in terms of being able to actually go and simulate that physical interaction. So I think there's some really interesting possibilities from that accessibility perspective.
Yeah, I've got nothing to top Zoe's story, I'm afraid. I just like the tech and messing around with it. You know, I like messing with the virtual reality shooters and whatever else. I think it's great use of the technology. And to be honest, that was it for today. I think we just maybe a tiny bit over, but I think it was between 30 and 40 minutes. It's our first time really stepping through the content. So we just like to say thanks for listening. We appreciate that there's another 4, I think, that I counted when Paul was running through the lineup of Mesh for Teams sessions. So we'd like to thank you for choosing ours. I'm obviously going to tune into some others and see what the competition is like. We've got, I was going to say, I'll come to that in just a second, Peter, if that's all right. I think the calls to action, if you could rate our session, it would be greatly appreciated. Attend more sessions and join our keynotes. Show your love using the kind of the Metaverse1 hashtag and at MetaverseConf. I think from our point of view, we'd just like to say a big thanks to Metaverse1 for having us. And thanks to you guys for listening, really. I can see that we've got one question there. So Peter's asked a question and says, Luke and Zoe, what is your take on the likeliness? Okay, well, this is kind of, I'm really hopeful that we will see a preview. I don't have any insider knowledge, I'll be honest, that we have, that they told us. The last I read that was publicly available, it said it was coming first half of 2022. So we submitted the session a number of months ago, expecting to actually have the ability to play with it and kind of demo it. Unfortunately, that's not come to be today, but we're hopeful that we kind of give you a grounding of what it would look like is the thing. So I'm hopeful they'll ignite it, they'll announce it ignite, so we'll see.
Yeah, I do think just from a broader metaverse perspective as well, we're already starting to see more organisations exploring it, and I do think that the next 2 to 3 years we will really start to see this maturing, and you know, there'll be use cases out there that haven't even occurred to us yet, because until people can actually get in and really start seeing what the possibilities are and start playing with it on an enterprise scale, I think there'll be some maturity in the metaverse over the next 2 to 3 years, and some really cool stuff that people do with it.
So I think let's have a look. So I think we've got a question. Will the recording be shared? I think yes, it will be. I think it's all sessions are recorded and they will be available. I'm pretty sure that the next question was really about. Okay, thank you, Paul, for that one. The next one is Microsoft Teams for Mesh a configurable product, or will we have the possibility to extend and develop for Mesh? If yes, what kind of technologies should we master to best extend Mesh? So I think there is a whole platform that you can build on this, but I think it's going to be more Microsoft Mesh is the thing. So I would, if I was looking to get ready for Mesh for Teams, I would probably look, and this is just a very simple one, is that I would probably look to start working in AltSpace VR and see what you want to configure in terms of spaces. I think if you're looking at it from more an extensibility and developer perspective, I would go look at the underlying mesh developer platform is the one. And I think there's a whole bunch of tools and capabilities around that. I think there's an SDK as well that you could make use of. But if you want to really get quite heavy into it, I would go look at the underlying mesh developer platform. Whereas if you, oh yeah, sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say, for anyone from a dev background as well, I do think that as the platform matures, we'll start to see a shortage of things like XR developers. So I think for people who've got an interest in this and a dev background, that's probably a smart direction to move in.
And yeah, there is an SDK out there that has a whole bunch of different things, but I think, yeah, you're primarily going to be looking to develop stuff with a HoloLens mesh app is the one. Probably that's where you'd start. AltSpace VR is going to be the underlying kind of virtual spaces. We've got Teams. They did mention Dynamics coming to that, but I don't really know. But there's a whole bunch of different kind of developer ones out there. So it depends how far you want to go, I guess, is the question. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Thank you for the shout out. Do you think we'll suddenly see a lot more enterprise grade hardware to support this? So yes, I'm very excited to see what Apple is bringing out. To be honest, that's the one that I'm most keen for. So I have a lot of Apple devices. So I'll be honest with you, I'm excited to see that. I think it's Apple Reality Pro is what they trademarked in the last couple of weeks. I also had a quick look, and I think there's another an Oculus Pro coming out from Meta. I'm hopeful. I really hope that kind of Microsoft is going to bring the price of the HoloLens down at some point to make it obtainable for us mere mortals. Let's have a look.
Yeah, I mean, the HoloLens is interesting, isn't it? Because I'm sure when we first started looking into the metaverse, it was about £2,000, and when we checked recently, it had gone up to what, £3,000.
Yeah, and Robert Copeland, is the mesh developer platform available to work today or only conceptual? I'm pretty sure it's already out there because you can develop apps for the HoloLens is the one, and we actually tried one at South Coast Summit last year, where you had they built a custom app on the mesh platform. Yeah. And it was like a dummy on the floor, and you'd have to give it CPR and it'd tell you how to do it. It was pretty cool. So that they built their own custom app. So it must be out there. I don't have a specific link just at the moment, but I'll probably include one when I revise this deck. Is the thing to talk about. It's the thing. I think Meta's is around the corner in terms of the Oculus Pro, as it were. The Apple event is today, October 11th at Meta Connect. Awesome. Apple's got an event today, so I'm going to tune in and see. I'm guessing it's just iPhone 14, maybe a new iWatch, some AirPod Pros, but maybe they'll talk about it. We'll see. I'm wondering whether those with VR headsets will receive any advantages, real or perceived, over those without. Could the pricing of higher headsets create a two-tiered metaverse? Okay, it's an interesting question, discussion point. To me, I'll be honest with you, the interface for the PC is quite clunky in terms of navigating AltSpace VR. So I think there will be a definitive advantage of having a virtual reality headset. One, it'll be more immersive. Two, I think it holds kind of your attention better. If you've got a headset strapped on you, yeah, you're likely to be checking your messages on your phone and so on and so forth. I think it's probably it's more immersive. It'll hold your attention a bit better. I think it's easier to navigate and use. Those are probably some of the ones that I would rattle off immediately. Is the thing.
I think that point around the focus of it being immersive is a good one. I know someone who they've had a headset for ages. They use it for like cinema and all kinds of stuff like that. But he told me that he'd actually coded in the metaverse. And I was really confused, but he just said from a focus perspective, the fact that he was so immersed in it meant that he was really focused. He didn't have any distractions, and I just thought that was a really interesting take as well. So as we battle the increase in distractions and noise, that's a really interesting take on it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. Did coding in the metaverse? That's very cool. I wish I did some coding in the metaverse. Unfortunately, my language is on that great, but will definitely be more of an advantage for people with more space in their office or home. So I don't have a great deal of space. I can hardly make the grid or the guardian space, as they'd call it, from the Meta one to map this one out. Yeah, thanks very much for listening, guys. Yeah, if you could leave us sense of present currently works. Yeah, Vive. Yeah, so it's pretty much all. There's across all different platforms. So I was actually spinning up on my Mac earlier today. I've got kind of the Meta Oculus headset. I did want the Valve Index, but I think it was I read it was a bit unreliable in terms of the controllers continually break. So I had to wait until these bloody Meta accounts came out for when I couldn't go with a Facebook account. So thanks, JW. I don't know your last name. Apologies, but thank you for the feedback.
Brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for joining and for the great questions as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. We would love some feedback if at all possible. And again, a big shout out to you guys for attending, and Metaverse One for having us.